social interaction. And like we heard that from Vygotsky and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But say like if you were asked like, you know, do you know how to play this sport like soccer or something, and you could like know like all the rules, like the best tactics, like you can like look at people who are really good at soccer like on professional teams and say like, oh, they should like do that better, or like they would get better at this. But if you can't play soccer, then you can still not answer yes to that, you know. And so like I wonder like, as you said, like how would we define like knowing a language, you know?
Yeah, I mean, Vygotsky's like purpose. I'm trying to remember, because he was the one that did like the purpose, the reason for language. All of us, I think, all of them were outputty. It was like we were all just basically being able to really communicate something. I think what this whole one is, like the one about just the input, I think that might just have to do, because I'm trying to remember the reading exactly, but I feel like that might have to do just more about learning and acquiring.
Yeah,
like
that's true.
Like when it comes to like acquiring and getting it, it definitely has a lot more. But for it to be useful as a language, you have to have an output, because like language is to communicate.
Yeah.
With people.
I see that. I totally see
So
that.
yeah.
I've talked to people and been like, well, do you actually speak, you know, do you speak this language? And they're like, yeah, I can do everything but speak it. When or like hear it, I think sometimes too. So I guess you do need to be confident with your input before you can.
And this happens a lot in like households where like second generation immigrants or like maybe even third, because like their grandparents only speak the language. Their parents speak both the languages. So then your children don't necessarily like end up speaking like Spanish, but they, you know, they hear it all the time from their grandparents talking. I have so many friends who are like, hey, like when my grandparents don't speak English, but I live with them and I understand what they're saying, I just can't really talk to them. You know, it's such a weird thing.
Yeah, so like if we have to divide language into 4 sections, I think it would be reading, writing, speaking, and listening, right? So we can like separate the input and output by input as in listening and reading, while output would be like speaking and what was it? Writing, right? Because you're actually like putting that out. And what I've seen while teaching Koreans and or English to like students is that if the parents speak it, which is input, they do a lot better. But when they don't kind of express that out in the output, my point of view, I think input is important, but output would be more important. And it is actually like the entire reason why we're learning language is for output, for communication, for interaction, right? That's my point of view on that. So what I think is like input does help out with the output, but if we have to choose, if we have to like push students to, I think we should like output would be more important. Yeah. Like in a sense where in order to speak and express your language, you should learn to listen, right? Yeah. So like kind of focus end goal being the output. What am I saying?
I get what you're saying.
Coffee.
They're so related though. It's like you gotta have
that end.
You really want to have both. You do, but I get, the input probably comes first. I get that.
I know that like there are like studies that when you have like a child or a baby, that you should like just kind of talk normally to them and just say what you see and just say full sentences rather than like talk to them like a baby. Yeah, do baby talk and stuff. And so that's probably like, you know, one example, because like those babies who just get regular talk, they learn the output way faster, you know. So that's interesting.
Also, this is kind of going back a little bit, and this is probably like obvious, but when you were talking about like someone not being confident in like their language, that kind of had to do with the affective filter, because my thing said is used when a student doesn't have confidence about their language. So that's the same kind of concept. Like they're not really confident what they're saying, and even if they do know it, they don't have confidence, and so then they're not speaking it, and so then therefore they might not be learning as much. I'm not sure if this is like a learning block that's in this example, but there is some kind of like, I guess, block when you're not speaking it, you're not doing as much with it as you could be doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think affect is important in any learning situation, despite language. Like if a child has like an emotional, physical, or mental block up, they're not gonna get anything that they're learning in any class. But I think that there's, like we talked about, there's a lot of anxiety that people carry with language and with what people think about them. And that can definitely like prevent people from actually being open.
Yeah.
Do you think that is one of the reasons why, I just have to go back and said like the beginning of people's posts just to see what this guy's name was. Crashing. Yeah. Do you think that's why he like really stressed like the whole like environment of acquiring a language? Like it needs to be like kind of like chill, you know?
Yeah.
I think was it like the second video where he talked a lot about anxiety and stuff like that, yeah.
Well, you like, so I noticed one strategy that would help with the anxiety is like, I kept coming across this, I don't know about you guys, but like, the teacher teaches it, and then you're in a big group, and then you're in a smaller group, and then you do it independently, so then you like have learned it several different times, several different ways.
Mhm.
And then also, just the anxiety thing, like, just in like class, like, this happened to me last week actually, but I was learning something, and like, I was with two people who like, were a lot more knowledgeable, because they already had classes on it, and so I was getting a bit frustrated, because they both understood it, but I didn't. So I had to like kind of leave for a second and then come back and kind of have my brain like put in the right place, because I was kind of like getting frustrated, and so it was hard for me to like concentrate. But then I kind of had to leave for a second, kind of like recenter my brain and be like, okay, we're in class, we gotta concentrate, gotta your brain. But that can happen like in any classroom with anybody, and there are different kind of approaches to like make the classroom more I don't know, like comfortable for students.
It could be like anything. It could be like time constraints. Like I think even as a student, like when I'm learning like this quarter, when I'm like doing credit overload, there my time constraints and my stress with that prevents me from actually learning a lot of my material, because I'm like, oh, I just got to get this done. I have to produce something, and then I don't really like engage with the material enough. And I think that's happening in all of my classes right now. Like even when I'm reading it, like my mind goes off for a little bit. I might have scanned the whole page and not gotten a single bit of
Yeah.
it.
I do that
That
so
happens.
much. Such a bad habit.
So bad.
Autopilot, I call it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you don't even like get, like I could go through a whole page and then like I
No.
don't even
You're like,
I was
read
like,
that?
I have to reread it again.
You're like,
And
did I
then
really
it
go
happens
word by
2 more
word and
times,
read
like,
it?
Did I read the page before? What happened? How did I get here?
Yeah.
Cause you're just thinking about all the things you have to do. Or,
Yeah, whatever it is.
It's really hard to have a clear mind.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could move to I think it was set 3, the one that you and I did, the BNC.
Crashing's monitoring hypothesis, how to advance or inhibit. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What role
I
do you
honestly
play?
saw that you did all of those, so I was like, okay, I'm not gonna just
Oh yeah, you like
gonna do the
defined every single thing.
Yeah, you freaking did everything. So I was like, you know what? For reference, I'll just leave her to do that. That was actually really interesting.
Set 3 or set 4?
I think that's at 4.
Is this about
Set
the psychological distance and social
Yeah,
distance?
the distance and
Yeah.
stuff. I thought that was really,
I had curiosity.
really,
before.
really, a
Is that
really interesting thing.
I've never said this sentence that weird.
Yeah.
I had curiosity
I
before that.
texted you about this, but I didn't know for the question if you lived in a country or community where you spoke. I kind of just was like, if I spoke a different language, I would do this or be affected by that. I can't really like answer that too well.
I mean, like, I want to talk about this because like I thought it was really interesting, and like I wanted to kind of share you guys' experiences and see what you guys, I mean my experiences to see what you guys thought. Like, my schooling system and stuff I went to was school. Like the school I went to was definitely, I was like the minority, like predominantly white. Like it was what it was. There's other schools in my town who were like the minority was a majority at these schools. Like they had really strong like bilingual programs and stuff and things like that, and like it was a lot harder at my school to do that. And my parents, for example, like they like were always around like English speakers and things like that, so their community was English speaking, so that really kind of, it gave them like no breathing space. Like they really just had, you know, like they had to learn this, like they felt the pressure, and like it wasn't like that they just had to go to school to learn English. Like it was just like, it's just they were around it so much and they knew some basics that like they were able to pick it up faster, as opposed to like my had one like very distant uncle. Like I just honestly, I don't even think we're that related. I just use him for the sake of this example. He lives in Mattawamkeag, Washington. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that place or whatever.
I've heard of it. I
It
don't know
is
where
like-
it's at.
It is like 98% like Latino.
Oh, really?
And like he's been living here in the United States since '95, and the guy honestly has the English capacity of a 3-year-old. And that's because like in that community you don't like, yeah, you're in the United States, but his environment has just been so Spanish
Mhm.
that he just hasn't
Oh
really
yeah, it's
been
right outside of
motivated.
Yakima.
Yeah, I remember like we used to pass by like the one time, like the 3 times we went to Yakima.
I was like, I think I know that, but
Yeah.
it's very small.
Yeah, your school probably like played against like their high school or something like that.
Yeah.
But like doing my research on this town because I was just really interested, like everyone there speaks Spanish. Like everyone there.
God, I can't even exactly. I'm looking at pictures of it and I'm trying to pinpoint exactly where it's at,
Yeah.
but it is very very far like
Yeah.
out.
Out of the way.
Yeah, so they definitely have a condensed community. That makes sense.
Yeah. It's like it's exactly like it's like far away. It's like kind of I think like Waterville and Quincy ways
Mhm.
too. Like it's a very like Spanish speaking. Like they're so far away from like
Oh,
yeah. It's just like they're just kind of have been able to kind of do their own thing.
What you just described is either like enclosure or cohesive.
Mhm.
Like basically that's like they're in an environment where they're not,
Mhm.
they're kind of like good by themselves and they're like not, they're just around other people who speak the same language. So then, and they're fine, and so then they don't need to like, they don't have interaction with like another group. I'm just like
Do we call
going through the
that?
definitions.
Yeah. Do we call that like short social distance within the community and long social distance, like throughout like intra city,
So
inter-city?
when a learner group is
Intra's inside
Like-
the city, inter's between cities.
Oh.
so more social distance versus less. social
Like do we say that has like that community has a lot of social distance from?
Yeah,
Places around it.
I guess, yeah.
When we're talking about the individual, like these places I would say are like short distance.
Yeah.
As a community as a whole, it's like very long distance. Because it's
Yeah, exactly.
so
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
But like within the community, like there's a lot of like there's not a lot of like difference between like sides of social groups, you know, like the cohesiveness of like the culture, you know.
I definitely think it depends on the goal too, and like if like this is a condensed like cohesive community on its own, like or if it's within a larger community. Like when you're talking about like when you went to Korean church, like that was a community where you could share like your Korean language, but you guys also spoke English because you're probably, I'm guessing, part of a larger community, you know, in your area where you needed to use English. And I guess they don't feel like they're a part of a larger community where they need to speak English.
How do you think like these apply to like school, like ELL kids in school?
Well, it depends on the classroom.
Yeah, like kind of what I was wondering was like, so like as a teacher, or like maybe not as a teacher, but like as a worker who works with like underprivileged people, is your job to like make like the psychological distance that these students have, you know, between like the work and them short enough to overcome the social distance that they have? If that makes sense. Cause like, you know, social distance, you know, there's a lot of things that happen to these kids that let them know that they're different, you know, from the majority. But like psychologically, like what, like motivation and attitude, like stuff like that, you say are like factors that determine psychological distance. So do you try to overcome social distance? Is that a plane or a skateboard?
I was a skateboard.
Okay.
I'm kind of thinking over what you're saying, but I do think it's important for like students to feel like they have a sense of community in the ELL classroom, especially if they share a similar language and culture. But you also do want to bridge the gap so that they do feel like they're also connected to, you know, students outside of that classroom too, so they don't feel like they're alienated or anything.
Yeah, I feel like if a student feels like they're alienated or, I mean, which can happen very likely, they will kind of almost resent, like, learning the language that is, like, of the culture that is, I don't don't know, the more dominant language,
Yeah,
I'm not sure what it's called, but just like the power, I guess the power structure too, like if one has more power than the one that has lesser power, I mean, they're not gonna wanna be with this other group that makes sense.
No, yeah.
Yeah, and it like kind of reminds me of the Rasa program too, like that video we watched as
Mhm.
well. It's like, you know, you have these people like learning kind of in a way their own thing. And it's like, I doubt if there really are like a lot of negative effects in that way. But I can definitely understand like seeing the way that my high school dynamic was. I was like, there was like this push for like the minority groups to just stay together, and it was just like, it made it seem a lot of times like there was like this common enemy, and like everyone was like, you guys are different, but different in a bad way kind of thing. It's like there's this big separation from like the white population, like everyone else. And it was just like, okay, it's important to like be like, hey, like I am a different person, like I have my own thingies, not my own thingies. Wow, my vocabulary today is
struggling
great.
What do you, I
Cool.
wonder what you mean by stick together, like, what do you mean by that in like a school setting?
Oh, okay, here, this is honestly, this is Wenatchee High School. After school, class is done, I'm gonna eat some of your waffles. Whatever, the west side of the school was like completely all of like the Hispanic kids.
Clicks.
Yeah, exactly, like cliques within themselves, like they're, you know, they all probably all like didn't even hang out with each other, just like all Latinos, one side of the school.
They just got attracted.
Yeah, and then the other side of the school, all like towards like the gymnasium and the cafeteria, all of the white kids. Like I said, like they weren't all like this, they weren't in the same clique, they weren't in the same thing, they're just how they associated themselves, and like everyone noticed it, and like no one did anything about it. And it was really interesting, because no one knew why it was happening. It's like, this wasn't really a racist school, like there wasn't like, we didn't have problems with like consistent racism and like, hey, like it was just how it happened, and it's just like,
It wasn't like
Yeah.
the white kids like wanted to be on an
Yeah.
opposite side, you know, it's just like
That is interesting.
naturally like they form like groups and cliques, and then naturally those cliques have like a bigger cloud
yeah.
because they're all white. And so when one goes somewhere, it's just like that's kind of where you use in your cloud. It's weird.
And it kind of leads me to like, as I'm talking about this, it kind of thinks me, and I feel like when it's like lack of education, and there's like lack of someone, and this is gonna take forever to explain, not forever, it's just gonna be hard to explain. For example, my school, there was no one telling like us, the Latino kids, that like in the Rasa program, like there wasn't anyone like really guiding us through and like having us be accepting of who we were. It was just what we were naturally, like, I mean, I was weird, I just kind of didn't care. We were all just like naturally, like they were all just like naturally just like coming together, because like when there wasn't someone guiding them and kind of like, hey, this is who you are, this is okay, you live in this community, like, but it's okay to be who we are, and kind of things like this, like you kind of tend to like, your mindset already is like, oh, I'm different, and in a negative, like, I'm different from these people, like, different,
Yeah.
you know? Like, if there isn't someone telling you, like, is that making sense at all?
No,
I'm
yeah.
kind of getting what you're saying,
Yeah.
like in the essence that people like to be around people who are similar to them.
Yeah.
I think that's human.
Yeah.
Like we stay with our family because we shared experiences and lives with our families, and then we have larger families. And I get what you're saying. Like we gravitate towards people that are like us
Yeah.
in a way, but I feel like you're trying to say something more too.
Yeah, I'm
so.
trying to say something more about like, there's a difference between like me accepting that I'm Latino, I have my self-identity, I know this, I'm among you guys who obviously are not, and like I don't feel like I am a 100% outsider, I don't completely like isolate myself from you guys for that reason.
Mhm.
Like I accept that I'm different and I am my own person and I kind of have my own island really,
Yeah.
but I'm not doing it away because I've been educated and stuff and like, you know, in a certain way to be like, yo, this is your community, this is something that you are, and I feel like when there isn't that like when someone doesn't tell you that, like I'm obviously going to like see you guys as like different than me, I'm different than you, I'm just gonna,
You know, so you think back at Wenatchee High School, they do like, they like think that there's a big difference? Like
Yeah.
it's not just like
exactly.
nonchalant, like they're not thinking about it, it's like, you do think that we're
Yeah,
very different.
yeah, and it's like, I'm like, I kind of feel bad for like wasting like this like camera time, but it's like something that like, I wish I could really word it.
So you're
But,
thinking
like-
about like self-identity kind of, and how you're aware of it, and how it like affects your environment, and like how you interact with it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like, yeah, exactly, like, I'm aware of myself, I
Like
am,
you develop
how-
your self-identity
yeah,
around
I've
people
yeah.
who are kind of
It's
no.
so, it's so complicated, I just like, I'm trying to think about it like this, okay. Myself, I understand that I'm Latino. If I see like Hispanic people, oh, I can relate to these people, I'll go talk to them and stuff. But I like, as opposed to like why I think their mindsets were like, oh, Latinos, this is the only people I can ever relate to, this is the only thing I can ever do. It's like there was like this bridge missing, and I think that's what I'm trying to say, like, I have a bridge, I feel, because I was like, you know.
You feel like you're part of a bigger
community, yeah,
than just,
than just myself,
that.
and I have a bridge, and I don't feel like white people are like this alien thing that I
Yeah.
don't understand, as
That-
opposed to like, you know.
It kind of sounds like it's not exactly what you're saying, but it kind of sounds like double consciousness, which is like pretty popular in like African American tradition, and like it used to mean that a black person could see themselves in the eyes of, they saw themselves as other, but they could see themselves in more than one way. They saw themselves as an American, and then they saw themselves as also there was an African root to them, but they didn't feel like they were just one of those things. They felt like they were both.
Yeah.
And so, but you can always see yourself through the eyes of like, I don't know, that's not exactly what you're trying to say, but it sounds
No,
like
it
it's
makes
kind
a
of
lot, yeah,
related.
and it's actually like making a lot of connections to what I'm saying. It's just kind of like I wish I would have. Like, if I wouldn't have had this thought like in the middle of this conversation, I probably would have prepared it better.
Yeah.
But
No, I really like that. That's actually really interesting to think about.
Yeah.
Like, just
It does remind me of double consciousness though,
Yeah.
not like phrasing that well.
So does the idea of like social distance, does that kind of like fizzle away, like since you've like left Wenatchee and such, like?
yeah,
That's
definitely. I mean, that was the thing. Like I feel like the social distance and stuff like that like was really, especially from like my elementary school, because like I just, it was, like the demographic definitely changed in high school. Like that's when like I was like, oh, there's some more brown people like me. But like I was kind of used to it. It's kind of like already there in a way. It's like
You don't have a singular identity, and that's like important.
exactly.
It's not
Yeah.
just one thing. You feel like you're a part of
exactly.
of more than one like singular community.
Yeah.
I get that.
Yeah, and like that's so it's like the fizzle. You said the fizzle.
It's like the
fizzle.
breakfast
Mrs.
club.
Fizzle. Breakfast club.
That was a
Breakfast
very
club.
big moment.
I still haven't seen the Breakfast Club, but I want to.
Does anyone have like last or a couple more?
It's been about 45 minutes.
It has been 45 minutes.
Can we like briefly talk about the
Yeah.
final article maybe? Like
Final article.
the last part,
Sign language
the
one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So
Petito
yeah.
one? Just
Yeah,
like
the Pepito or something like that.
Petito.
Pepito.
Petito.
Yeah, that was really interesting.
I was interested because I've always like been aware of sign language, but I've never like when I think of language, I think of like talking, but then it's like, well, sign language obviously isn't talking, but you're still communicating. That's like the point.
Well, one thing that I thought was really cool too was not just the linguistic factors that prove that sign language is a language. Like yes, it does. But like some of the social factors that show like sign language is its own form of language because people have different dialects. Like it's not a universal language. Like it's
It
broken up
changes
between
with culture.
countries and communities and it changes over time, just like English has changed over time in every other language in the world. So that was really cool.
That was really
It's expressive too, because I've seen a sign like person that speaks like signs and stuff like angry, like you can do
Really?
it. You know?
Yeah.
You would just like even like this means cookie. Just gonna feel like you can there's a difference
You
between
smash
like
it.
cookie and like I want my cookie like forceful.